Ian Golden, welcome to Environmental Coffee House. How
Thank you for
are
the
you?
opportunity. I'm
How
well.
are
How are
you?
you? I'm well.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, good. Just waiting for some snow. I'd like to see us get what Buffalo did, but
Yeah. Did they get a few
we
inches?
not yet. But we're waiting to build an audience, and I have shared this already, and so uh, I have a teammate that will be sharing, and I think people will start joining us, and they already have.
Cool.
So, Ian Golden. Ian Golden is a wonderful entrepreneur. He is a dad. He is passionate about where we live, District 23 in Western New York. And he is running for the primary to unseat Tom Reed, Republican, all of the above energy guy. Obviously, he's not somebody that we are a fan of on
Yeah.
Environmental Coffee House.
Have you had him on yet? Is that the?
Oh boy, I don't think he likes me very much.
Mhm.
I go to his events and live stream them. I don't know. I don't know if he would come on. But Ian, why don't you introduce yourself now and you talk about yourself a little bit, the intro and why you wanted to run, and then we'll get into some good
All
stuff.
right. Yeah. So my name's Ian Golden. As you introduced, I grew up in rural Pennsylvania, just on the eastern border of Lancaster County, and it was an area probably not too much different. Some of the parts of our district. Some of crossing the congressional district on foot, I think, was like going home in certain regards. So just on the eastern border of Lancaster County, I was surrounded by some Amish farms, and it was a nice rural setting. I really enjoyed growing up in that area. I spent about 18 years of my life living in Tompkins County. I was a student, and I've started 4 businesses in upstate New York, and I've got 2 young daughters, ages 6 and 8. In between being a student and coming back to open my first business in '05, I spent a bit of time in the West, and again came back to be a little bit closer to family, start the businesses, and I'm running really because I've got 2 young daughters, and I got to the point where I just wasn't okay with the future and the table that was being set for them and their generation. I just felt like there was too much division in our communities. Decreased sustainability in any number of metrics, and so many, I feel like, cliffs coming their way. And I couldn't really just sit back and just talk in my own echo chamber and silo. And so I decided to step up and I think leverage the communities that I've been a part of and try to serve.
I like that. Serve, because it's the constituents that are number one. And I think that's something that's lacking in our current congressman here, Tom Reed. Every time I think about him, I can't help but think that he kind of sold us out with the ISPs, and he sides with the fossil fuel industry and the corporations. And Ian, I know that you will not be that congressman.
Yeah, very, very trackable numbers there, right? I think he was actually one of the sold out for one of the lower numbers as far as the representatives went. I think he was somewhere, around 32,000. I think he had accepted from the ISPs.
That's what it was.
And I believe from the oil and gas, he's somewhere around maybe 865,000 or something to that effect over the course of his tenure.
Jeez, that's a lot. Wow.
It is a lot. It is a lot.
Yeah, it is. How's fundraising going for you?
It's going all right. Yeah, we had our first really active month of fundraising was in September. And it was really reaching out into, started with the friends and family network and plugging a bit through my business networks. And we had a really good month, which I was thankful for. We were the lead fundraiser in FEC quarter number 3. We have roughly 400. Heidi, born in Lancaster, right on.
Wait, let me show it. Let me show it. I was born in Lancaster. I only lived there for 2 years, so I barely remember anything except what I heard from my family and films. That's a nice heritage. Very cool.
Beautiful.
You see, this is going on YouTube, so I have to show the comments so that when it goes on YouTube, people don't get lost.
Yeah, cool. So,
thanks, Heidi.
Yeah, that was a good. But I just got sidetracked and where I was just headed with
You were headed to that. You were grateful, where you grew up and how.
Right.
Then we were talking about Tom.
Yep, and then into fundraising, and we had a good month. I think we have roughly a little over 400 unique donors, which is as of the end of September. So we've got I think, 4 times the number of unique donors. The next closest candidate. I don't know where Representative Reed is, but I'm hoping we have more unique donors than Representative Reed. Of course, he's got boatloads of money to bring to the table, but I think the number of unique donors is really a testament to just the community, right? And that's really what it's about. So I'm thankful that it's challenging, but it's good.
And if we all donate $27 a clip, and we can save that, people that want to donate to your campaign or anybody else's, that $27 number work for Bernie.
It makes a huge difference. I think we have a donor in at $3, and literally that donor is amazing because it really speaks to just somebody that's showing support, and every bit helps. And we need, and I'm thankful for any amount of support in that regard.
Oh, that's great. And if I'm sure, because you're a small business owner, that there are businesses that can donate to a candidate without the expectation of special treatment. Because if you did as your business, I'm sure you would not.
Yeah, and that's I'm still, I think, figuring out crossing that bridge as I'm going. I mean, this is I think it's a topic that's close to my heart in with regard to the way that money corrupts. And so that's my first platform on my website is trying to clean up Congress, and it's reducing the influence of big money. I want everybody to have equal access to me and influencing my decisions, and that's really important. And so, so far I haven't accepted any money from corporations. It's been all individual donors. I was really thankful to get one check from a good friend. It's just she and her son who have a grant writing corporation. And she wrote a check, but I haven't cashed it yet because I haven't crossed the bridge of, I think, taking money from corporations. But I think there's clearly a difference between a large corporation currying favor with a small local connection or corporation. So we'll keep figuring that out.
Cash the check. She's a grant writer. But although that somebody might even pull out of the air that they're going to say that you're going to be on some committee and steer grants their way, but that is the suspicious nature of politics. I mean, it's nearly insane what's going on out there, and but we live in a very sane, nice, lovely district. I mean, we have farms, higher ed, businesses. Where I'd like to go a little bit? Ian did something really interesting. He ran the district. I'm talking ran, guys. Ian, why don't you tell us about that experience and what that accomplished and who you met, things like that before we
Yeah, so I started September 26th from Geneva, New York. We had a wonderful send-off party at a bar there, and it was a really wonderful people that showed up and to lend support and just to touch base. And Geneva's I've found it to be a wonderful, really wonderful community of a great group of engaged individuals. And so we started in Geneva, and it was a little under 400 miles. I went from there to Penn Yan and down to Watkins, up through Teberg, down through Ithaca, Owego, and then west out to finishing in Dunkirk, Lake Erie. So a little under 400 miles. I did it in 29 days. And it was really just an opportunity to connect with people along the way, wherever they were, and to provide snapshots and visages of people and stories and businesses along the way. And, and those interactions weren't necessarily political in nature, right? I mean, it's just stopping to have the conversation with people and just connect. And it was great. And we got a decent amount of media out of it, which is also, part of the intent. I think the Hill picked us up for a national piece, and then we've had maybe 15 or 20 other more local pieces, radio, cable, newsprint. But really, it was wonderful to just, I think, feel the district. And now that I'm crisscrossing back and forth, it's really cool to be able to, I think, see places and relate at a different level. And there were some good stories that came with that as well. That at some point now or into it, we can get into it a little bit.
Sure. Well, I thought it was great because I thought, first of all, free press is always a good thing,
Mm-hmm.
and for positive things. You're running a very positive campaign,
mm-hmm.
and we are a very unique community. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you learned about the community and what you saw.
By and large, as you've mentioned, the community is a lot of it's very rural. The amount of farms, the amount of small businesses is pretty phenomenal. There are some communities that are doing okay in terms of a vibrant downtown and storefronts. There's communities like I started in Geneva. Geneva's got some good businesses, a historic downtown. Other pods, Penn Yan. I love downtown Penn Yan. It's maybe only a few blocks long, but it's a very functional, quaint downtown. Still an active hardware store. I bought a dresser there on Main Street. There's the diner. It just works. It's very functional, and I love it. Went down through and Watkins, also, I think some of these entities can survive on their own, just being internal to the community, but some that are doing really well tend to be those that have some sort of export economy. So whether it be academics, so university towns bringing in money from outside of the area, and that ends up that's their export economy. You have places like Watkins Glen, very big on tourism and NASCAR and the vineyards, and so you can see these pockets and what's driving them. And so, there and places like Corning and Ellicottville, every time I go through is just kind of booming as a community. And I know that gets a lot of tourism income, money coming in from Canada in terms of homes, but really cool downtown. So there was these pods, throughout the district that were wonderful. And then there's other communities that are for sure having a hard time. I mean, there's main streets that are gutted and vacant storefronts and just really challenging, past 20 to 40 years or so. So a really mixed bag, but it was really wonderful to get a taste, I think, of all of that.
Oh, that's terrific. It is. It's an amazing district. Ellicottville is a ski area. Ellicottville is a tourist attraction. And then all the way over on our side, there's Angelica and there's Belfast, all these tiny little towns. We have a large Amish population. Do they vote? Do the Amish vote?
Amish, I believe they do vote. And somebody can correct me on that if somebody else knows. That's one of our viewers, but I'm pretty sure they do vote. I think that they don't.
After them.
yeah, right. Yeah, secure the Amish vote.
They are the people that know how to do it. I mean, could we live like they live if there was some kind of, let's say the grid went down? These people know how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I read all this stuff every day about things that are going on in the world with the climate change and these weather events that are happening all over the world. We've been a bit insulated in Western New York from some of these bad events. Let's hope they don't happen. I mean, I had a tornado in July. That's not quite a typical event. Not at all. But you know what I'd like then? I'd like to go on a little bit. As we're talking about farms, I wondered what you think about this. I have a neighbor that has a farm right across the street. Well, it's a cornfield, big cornfield. And I noticed that they were spraying on the field. I never found out what it was. Do you know anything like that? And how would you handle your constituents when it comes to farming and pesticide use and the fact that we don't want it exacerbated where we live, and maybe education? What do you think?
Yeah, I think I'd have to have a discussion with those farmers. So far, going across the district and just my own connections, even though I grew up with farms around me, I didn't grow up on a farm. And so really I need a deeper discussion. I think case by case, because like you said, we want to find out what they're, spraying. Maybe Maybe it's the case that all chemicals are bad. Maybe what they're spraying, wasn't,
Right.
something that, we potentially, think it is. But, by and large, I think the reality is I don't want to necessarily weigh in with an ignorant, I think, take on it. I'd have to, I think, have the discussion with them and find out what they're using it for, what the track record is, whether there are better alternatives. And there, I really think I just need more education and more interaction.
What's great, Ian? We could learn with you.
We could learn together, right? And I could say categorically that I'm against pesticides. I'm for organics. And that's I think kind of who I am. But at the same time, if I'm going to be a representative, then I need to have that that dialogue with the individuals, and I need to help creatively come up with solutions. If there's certain reasons why they're not using it, is it a funding thing? Is it they've tried other organic or alternative methods and it hasn't worked? I just need to dive deeper there. So you need to go over and talk to your neighbor.
I know. I think he rents the property out.
Oh,
so
yeah,
he
probably.
comes, he's not here enough. He was spraying. I asked my husband, could you go over there and ask him? And he didn't. So I never found out. But it was something that was on my mind. And we do deal with on this page a lot about pesticides and pesticide use, runoff. And, in this community, it would probably be a good thing if we had a campaign for everyone in the community to know what's going into our groundwater and all that from the farms.
Yeah.
Without putting the farmers off.
Yeah. I'll share maybe one story that'll touch on potentially several topics for this evening. And it was in the context of doing the district run, but it was on one of my off days. I went up to join a friend who I can't say enough about in terms of just the integrity of the individual and just a really wonderful friend. But he happens to be a member of a sportsman's club in Interlaken. And guns are not part of my background, but coming into potentially representing this district, I need to have increasingly and genuine dialogues to have a better handle on the issue and the topic. So I went up and he invited out some individuals from the sportsman's club with him, and it was a really nice morning. The first time I had ever held a gun in my hand. We shot some mesquite and clay, but really it was there for the genuine dialogue and just to connect. And in the context of that discussion or post, we moved in and we just started chatting more. We started talking about I don't know how we got onto the environment. We got onto the environment. And so these two brothers had grown up fishing on Seneca Lake, and they said there really aren't any fishing stocks too viable left in Seneca Lake, that they have to go over to Cayuga to fish now. Huh. And so they're pegging it to just the agriculture along Seneca Lake, including the vineyards and the runoff from the pesticides and all the chemicals, and with the predominance of vineyards and farms around Seneca, that that's potentially the result of it. And so this would be a fairly conservative individual where typically you're thinking you're not going to get to an environmental regulation piece, but really this is the bridge that just comes with a genuine dialogue with people, where the fish stocks, the hunting, the clean water really did matter to them. So we got to the point where they'd be in favor of increased. Hello, Sharon. Good to see your name again. So they would support increased environmental conservation because it directly impacts them and with regards to sportsmen's interests. And so I think that we can for sure find the bridges out there as long as we're willing to step out and have the genuine dialogue with people in our community.
That's excellent, because my husband is a hunter, and my followers, I have a lot of vegan followers, but they understand, that you can't teach an old dog new tricks sometimes. And this is a very big hunting area, and we have firearms. Yeah. And I've learned how to negotiate firearms, but it is a big issue as far as how far we go with what firearms we have, nationally. And I don't know, in our neighborhood, in our area, nobody I know, no farmers I know have assault weapons. That's something that it would be nice to know the pulse of our area with that kind of thing, because I'm of the opinion that we should regulate somehow at the manufacturing level so that they're not even produced.
But ultimately, we have to start with that dialogue, right? And that's too often we hear the very poles of the two audiences, and with such a serious issue, we have a very tough time getting to, I think, rational dialogue from either side. And so, that's what I'm hoping to find, and that's what I had in that moment, which happened to bridge onto environmental concerns.
That was terrific. Yeah, and that's nice for us to hear, that there were people that are concerned about the runoff in Seneca Lake. I mean, we have just waterways all over, and predominantly wells out here in the rural area. So okay. Well, thank you. I'm going to segue a little bit, and then there is a question Heidi has. Well, you know what? Why don't we go to Heidi? I like the question. Heidi is asking, didn't Sandra Steingraber start her organization against fracking on Seneca Lake? I think so. I thought that was it. Are you involved in any of the anti-fracking efforts?
That could have been. I don't know the history and the roots of all of them. Yes, myself, I've been against fracking. I did do some canvassing for Shale Shock. It was a organization in our area. But that's another topic where, like guns, it's a very. I had the opportunity to sit down with a prior assemblyman, I think roughly 30 some years in the New York Assembly, and we had a really good discussion this past week. And he happens to be in favor of gas and fracking, and for him, he saw the impact on the the economy and whatever. But he just made the comment that he didn't know, for instance, in our primary, whether somebody who was against fracking could, I think, win the Democratic primary, but he didn't know if somebody that was against fracking could, I think, win the general. And right, so it speaks to one of the very hot button topics in our communities. And so for me, I happen to be against fracking, but I also was one that I think was empathetic to some of those who I think were in favor of fracking. I could kind of empathize with some of the landowners that are really in tough environment or tough, really economic situations, and very, tough to find a way out for some of them. And if somebody comes and says, we're going to give you this check for a ludicrous amount of money to, run a line or whatever under your property, and there's not much else going for you economically, I don't know, I get it, right? And so I think we got to start with at least empathizing to have that genuine discussion. I think if we come out of the gates and we're kind of just a party or individuals of, no, without actually having the dialogue to connect with people in our district and to understand some of those mechanics, then I don't know if it gets us, I think, to where we need to be in terms of having less divisive dialogue again. And so I'm really committed to that dialogue.
The dialogue is good. And on our side of the fracking debate, education is also good. Absolutely. And armed with peer-reviewed science and what happens to the land, to the state, what is happening to other states, what's happening to people's wells. It's a two-way street. So, and
this was absolutely, and this was, that bridges right into one of the other topics that you had mentioned that maybe we'll pick on the topic of just basically the war on science, right now. So in one of our candidate forums a couple weeks ago in Tompkins County, one of the questions was what we view as the biggest threats. And my response, I think they were just looking for one. I had two, but my first was climate change, and just the the negative impacts of that. In so many ways that you can cut that. But the other one was misinformation, right? It's the idea that that science doesn't matter, right? That the facts don't necessarily matter, and that speaks to a very hot topic at the moment. So the one that we were just talking about in terms of energy production and the impact on our environment and climate change, and just that war on science, right? Now we're seeing, who, to a certain extent, I think, who would have disagreed with when Trump said we're going to drain the swamp, right? I mean, decrease the amount of, I think, corruption and conflicts of interest in government. Everybody was behind that, right? And instead, we've seen the complete opposite with this administration in office. It's been just that, a war on science, right? It's bringing in all of the the coal industry attorneys or the, even Pruitt. It's so many glaring conflicts of interest and saying, we're not going to, in some cases, hire on the scientists. Instead, we're going to just favor the industry lobbyists. And that's a huge, huge issue that makes it, wow, it's just crazy, really.
When you're in Congress, you're going to be up against a lot of these interests, a lot of these personalities from the different states where they don't see us as down home, so to speak, in those views. I mean, they look at us, we're Yankees, we're New Yorkers, we're the liberals up there. So you're gonna, how do you think you'll deal with that when you come to that when you're in Congress?
Hopefully I'll find a way to just have the genuine dialogue. I mean, those that are really interested in just taking me down and pegging me in whatever, liberal box, well, I mean, if that's who they are, that's what they're going to do. But my intent is to really be on the ground connecting with people and showing that I'm really not out of touch. I may have, certain views. I'm willing to hear other people's views and let's talk about it. I don't want to be the congressman that's just going to, humor you and, pretend I'm listening and end up being a brick wall, So I'll keep crossing those bridges when I get there. But I would say that I'm feeling much more in touch than our current congressman.
Okay. I how can I disagree with that? Yeah. I can't. I think that you are right on here. I think that this is going to be kind of interactive tonight because we've got some people that are very that have some good feedback. I mean, Heidi is going to say, great to hear about such important dialogue that bridges the divisiveness in our country. Absolutely. Ian, you're spot on with all of that. Michael, his comment was fracking was designed and legalized in the 1990s, but in New York, we have a ban on fracking. And maybe we'll go into this just a little bit. We're talking about the dialogue. What does happen when when it comes up for you? When it comes up and the governor, whoever the governor is, has to make a decision whether to let it in or not. How does it work in Congress?
So I think I can weigh in on I think potentially from a federal level and talk about environmental regulations. And, there it would take re-strengthening the EPA and the clean air and water laws. But it still, in that case, would be a state issue. So, the governor would still have the say of, a yay or nay on that. And so far, Cuomo, whether he came in late to that party or not, is still kind of, your effective block there.
Yeah, but he listens to the people from our state and Congress. Michael says the air, water, and land are polluted permanently, and gas is sold globally with locals getting royalties. Are they getting royalties? So I don't know about how much people get. I really don't know what these gas.
Well, it's quite a bit. It's quite a bit. I think at least the amounts that were offered to landowners initially. I don't know. And Mike, his name was Michael. I think. Michael, do you know? Do you have any friends, or are you in on that issue where what people have been offered in terms of a amount there, at least in New York?
Well, we'll see if he answers. I don't know. And there's got to be a difference between having a frack pad on your property versus a pipeline going through. And does eminent domain come into play with a frack pad? I mean, that's a lot different than a pipeline. That's even more invasive. So I guess these are all kind of things we have to do.
But to his point, right? I mean, the oil for sure. That's pumped, and now we're exporting the raw crude and making quite can prevent fracking. Yes, Michael, to your point, yeah. So one of the other candidates that was potentially in our primary was a friend named Jason Leifer. He's a town and Dryden supervisor. I don't believe he's going to continue to run for Congress, but he was one of the ones who is also an attorney, and he decided to somewhat take on the fracking company on his own, which then established the precedent in New York to keep the fracking companies out of our municipalities and localities. So a lot of the gas may stay and I could be wrong on this, but I think most of the gas would stay local. But to his point, yeah, I mean, oil now is being exported, and the royalties indeed going to private landowners there. If I think he was saying maybe $1,000 for each acre. I'm guessing where that comment was going, which is quite a bit, right? I mean, not potentially uncommon for a family, a rural family in our district, to potentially an old landowner, $1,000 for each house. Huh. Oh, okay, so Michael, and that's playing into your community at large in terms of all of the residents in that town getting $1,000. But in any case, yeah.
Yeah, well, you know what? That doesn't sound like $1,000 for what? I guess we'll have to look into that to see what kind of, there's got to be a scale. They make offers or they sometimes threats. At least we won against the Northern Access Pipeline for now. We'll see.
Yeah.
I have, a very good friend of Environmental Coffee House, Henry, is asking, what does the Bureau of Land Management, or why does the Bureau of Land Management get to decide how much is paid for a fracking license? Is that, I don't even know, Henry. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, Henry, but you can for sure, so as we go, for all these listeners, I don't claim, at the moment, I'm not an expert in these issues. I'm doing all I can to get up to speed as quickly as I can. But it for sure does take, all of you out there in the community who are really doing your homework, keep me in the loop, reach out to me through, Facebook or the website or whatever, if you're really doing all of this legwork, man, or, feed us this information, as we go, because, I can only get to so much in any given day, but I'm thankful for anybody who, is able to plug in.
See, that's excellent. And you keep doing forums like this, and we will get there. If you come back with me again, or even any interview where there's interaction with people, asking questions is something that is really valuable instead of just talking at. This is invaluable, actually. I think it's great. And Henry says that there's a lot to ascertain. Yes, there is. It's a lot of information. But I'm sure that when Tom Reed started, he had to learn the same things that everybody in the district that would run would have to learn about the district.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
It can't be any different. So I think this is a great time then for me to segue into your say on your page. You say you can. I can tell you that as a small business owner and job creator in this district, we need more money in the pockets of earners and spenders, and policies that favor businesses who pay livable wages and keep profits and investment in our communities. Then I noticed you went to a solar distribution. You went to a solar farm in Geneva, New York, and you connected with Ryan Wallace of Small Grid. And some other friends from Geneva. And I thought that was great because now I'm going to contact them about what I want to do. And I found that out on your site. Tell us about the vision for that kind of stuff that could maybe offset the whole gas.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was really excited to come upon Small Grid and Ryan Wallace. So I was having an early discussion with an individual who is one of the entrepreneurs with an incubator in Ithaca called Rev. And it was an individual who had spent most of his career working for BP with energy. And we were talking about just the renewables and the grid as it is, and how to get to a more updated and sustainable grid. And we were talking about the dimensions of the diameters of the lines, and multi-phase technology would allow distributed energy to work, and some of the complications and challenges there. And through some of these topics, it's it's a downer for me, right? I mean, I think where we are now and where I'd like us to get as communities, whether it be the environmental front or various progressive aims, and there's so much special interest in money and in challenges to try to overcome to get there. And it's so I think of like the example for the grid. I mean, I know it's not necessarily profitable for companies to go in and just upend and redo the grid for the grid's sake, right? And it's not necessarily viable to just throw in a distributed pattern wherever. So it's like, man, how do you get there? And part of it was, then I came upon Small Grid, and what Small Grid does is it's basically a unit or a box that drops down into next to a house or in a community.
I saw it. I love it.
Yeah, and it has a solar panel on it. It's got a battery in there, and it also has a heat pump. So it's providing energy storage, heat, cooling, and it's basically all you need there to a certain extent dropped in, and it's off the grid. And so I was like, there it is, right? It's existing technology, that's already out there that somebody just put together in a package. And now you don't even have to wait for the grid to get updated. I mean, you can do it without that. And so, something that they're working on now is putting in a residential development along in Geneva, along Seneca Lake, and it's something that they can make. Basically, it's their own microgrid, and they've reached out to NYSEG to see whether they'd want to tie in and be part of that and be distributed and feed energy back in. And if NYSEG wants to go through and tie them into the grid and make that work, then they can do that. But they're also able to be off the grid as an entire community, just using basically these pods. And so it's, suddenly, you have the, advantage of a kind of one-stop shop, all there in one solution, drop it in. And it just, I think, gets around some of the difficulties inherent in having so much special interest in money and just, I think, resources in getting from where we are now to there. And so, yeah, I was really excited to come across Small Grid. We had actually a house gathering at the Wallace's last night. Some wonderful crew came out, and it was the first time that I had been to their place of business in their house. I had met him at a downtown location, which is profiling the company. But yeah, I mean, it was great. I came in the evening, but their first entity was this huge, I don't know what megawatt or how many panels, but a huge solar farm. You're going back this long driveway back to where they live. And it's always just inspiring to go by these big solar arrays or, whatever they are. So it was really cool. Yeah. And I'm very thankful for all the work that they're doing, and it would be cool to showcase them further. Or if you want to pop up with us at some point, we can go up together and check it out.
Oh, I would love to, because I'm in the market. I'm shopping, and my reasons are maybe a little bit more paranoid than others. I feel like if something happens with catastrophic weather in the future, I don't know. The things I read, and we had a tornado already, and it changed me a little bit. We are a municipality here, and I don't want to hurt where I live. So I don't want to stop paying them. I just want to have the ability to have my own power generation here.
Yeah. And so that makes it viable. Yeah. So and he had commented, Ryan had, after so much devastation, weather related, with Puerto Rico, for instance, I mean, it was pretty awesome that an entity like, Elon Musk would step up and basically say, if you're interested, we could really redo your entire grid in more sustainable fashion. These individuals who are lucky enough were able to be powering with generators, but they're diesel, and there's only so much diesel fuel, and so a big issue. But with units like the Small Grid, then really you could drop that in and be right. I mean, it's a solution, right? And so it's my hope that the technology that's there is able to leapfrog some of the challenges that we have. And so, as so with so much potential, these are the market-based solutions that I think that we all need and want. And thankfully, I think we're getting close to it being more economically viable in so many regards. And so, just having the market catch up allows us to, again, I think, leapfrog some of these challenges. So I think that's really exciting as well. And across the district, I think that that's also a very meaningful dialogue. So, tying back into the fracking discussion. Well, as it turns out, maybe the Marcellus Shale wasn't as advantageous for fracking as they thought it might be. And so a lot of landowners, were, but still feeling kind of, very, bummed is, not the right word, but to kind of miss out on what they were seeing as this big, fracking boom. But, so where do we go from there, right? And it would be something like, the amount of solutions that are inherent in sustainable technology. So so energy generation in this past year, where it was solar energy that created, more jobs than all of the fossil fuel industry combined in terms of, energy production. And, there are benefits that will still go down to landowners and municipalities. And, so these are ways that we can still bring in income and more so than we would have gotten, out of, potentially some of the other options. So it's cool that, that still ends up being a dialogue that ties into benefiting individuals and communities, and it's on its way.
Exactly what I was going to ask you, because you'd have to say to that farmer who says, well, I have 100 acres here and I can make all this money, and convince them that that's not in their best interest or in the community's best interest.
Yeah.
I think that's good. That's a good thing, something to strive for.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So then that kind of then takes me into pipelines. We've talked about fracking. Now pipelines are all over. It seems like every company, Enbridge, all of them want to put pipelines in to connect Pennsylvania, or like with Northern Access, it was going to be Pennsylvania up all the way to Canada and sold overseas. How do you feel, and how do you go into Congress and talk about this issue of selling internationally and then using people's yards, basically rip up their yards? And how do you do that? What do you think?
It's tough, right? I mean, the reality is for, somebody as a representative, right? That's a very, it's a tough thing, especially, in our district, which our district isn't necessarily, swinging 10% heavy in environmentalists, right? I mean, so, the person that typically, makes it into office is somebody that's typically in the pocket of the, the energy industries. So, what we absolutely need is people, like you, or maybe some of the people viewing tonight, to be out there still doing what you're doing in terms of protesting, in terms of lashing yourself to fences or gates or whatever, because it may not be the I think it was I think we were having the discussion sometime recently, and somebody made a comment towards I think one of Obama's quotes early on, and he was just talking about I can't do this alone, right? It needs to be all of you out there doing all of those things to hold our feet to the fire. But I think, and so thankfully, I think that's happening and playing out. It did with the Allegheny, County pipeline and other areas. But there are other areas that are still, I think, working through that right now and with a positive spin. So in Tompkins County and Lansing right now, it's playing out where there's talk of whether they need to increase the diameter of the pipeline that is potentially feeding one of the energy generation plants up there. And they're at the point that once you put in that larger diameter pipeline, then there's almost no turning back, right? I mean, it's guaranteeing that you're committed to that source of fossil fuel for, who knows how long, and at the expense of moving into more renewables. And so it seems like they're at the point now in the discussion where NYSEG is on board with not increasing the diameter of the pipeline, that instead they're going to try to insert smaller compressors to give the boost that they need to some of the entities there. And then they're going to open up the dialogue to see what other types of renewable energy possibilities they can then insert into that grid. And so thankfully, hopefully we're getting to the point you're seeing positive, I think, discussions and dialogues happening, which are, you're finding that common ground, and the dialogue is shifting to more sustainable, renewable energies. It's not all winds, but at least it's happening, and it's good to see.
Absolutely.
Hi, Tyler.
And oh, hi, Tyler. Let's put him on. Hi, Tyler. It's voices like yours, and you're younger, and you're energetic, and this is what we need. You are what we need to get into Congress.
And you're what I need to. You're what I need to be, held to task in Congress.
Well, all of us are going to do that. 2018 is pivotal. I know it is, because I feel like it's almost our last shot to make the changes, or we're going to. Climate change is going to. It's not a positive thing. I mean, the Arctic is melting, and some people think, Ian, that we've already passed the tipping point. And that's hard to talk about with a father of two.
Yeah.
And the science and the scientists that came out of COP23 are seriously, they're sounding an alarm. How do you get into Congress in 2018 and talk about that?
It's unfortunate that it should be, how do you get into Congress in 2018 and not talk about those things, right? I mean, it's such a huge and pressing issue, and even if you've got the Pentagon and the U.S. Department of Defense saying that that climate change is literally the biggest threat to world security. I mean, literally, I don't know how a politician gets into office without, I think, talking about that in a very real way, and talking about not just that, but getting to the point of solutions.
So, and I think that's what's missing. So much is missing about solutions to some of this stuff. It's just all, and everybody's fighting. Heidi is asking, what about the Keystone XL pipeline and the Ogallala Aquifer and maybe the Dakota Access Pipeline too, which probably provides much of the food from the breadbasket of America on our dining room tables? How might that affect the food that we eat when a pipeline spill happens? And also, I'm just going to throw in that food transportation too, if there are any shortages and we don't make changes.
Yeah.
I guess it's.
Yeah, for sure. A huge, one is what, Heidi's speaking to in terms of the contamination of the food supply, right? I mean, a very huge issue, but even just the access to water at all. A couple of years ago, I was out doing a race on the Navajo reservation. And it was, we had gone through, I think after the race, we were going from the Navajo over to the Hopi reservation, and we were going to take in a festival that they had going on. And we stopped in a relatively small village somewhere, and just got to chatting with one of the individuals from that village. And it used to be a more an area, was still fairly arid area, but they were able to get some, I think, crop generation out of it and feed the community. And I can't remember what the entity was, but it was an energy production facility of some sort. I don't know if there was oil, gas, or something, but it was somebody that was using just an amazing amount of water drawing from their aquifer, and things had just gotten to the point where literally there was just not to mention mineral rights as well. But yeah, I mean, literally, the aquifer was being drained, and they just couldn't grow food anymore. And yeah, it's on reading the comment as well. Third global food supplies are relying on the yeah. So right, very huge issues. You start tapping into these aquifers, and that's huge, right? And these huge corporations, to a certain extent, are just banking on taking advantage of so many populations they've been taking advantage of for so long. Usually, they may be in poorer communities, that have already somewhat been put out, and to a certain extent, they're allowed to get away with it with federal regulations and whatever. And it's crazy. Mm-hmm. On so many fronts, and it was unfortunate, and and that was something that was playing out, and not just seeing it on the news, but they're chatting with her and standing on the cracked, scorched, whatever, earth, and just hearing that it just wasn't that way.
That kind of gets me to segue into committees in Congress. What committees would you like to sit on if you were able to make this happen?
That I'm not sure yet. I think, at least my understanding, won't even maybe necessarily be my choice in the beginning. I think as potentially a freshman congressman, I may be wrong there, but I'll have to. I don't know if I have the answer to that question just yet.
Okay, that's fine. It just popped in my head thinking about totally. Translating all the farming and the pesticides and all these different issues into what would be your interests for for our community to sit on those kinds of those panels. All right. Well, I also wanted to get to net neutrality. Mm-hmm. It's not environmental, but it's going to affect my voice. It's going to affect a lot of voices. Mm-hmm. Where are you with it?
Let's see. We're using a program we're using right now is BeLive TV. Mm-hmm. The one, I think, when I was on with you last time, it wasn't BeLive, though, right? It was something else.
It was just I had a crappy computer.
Right. So there's got to be some sort of other. I mean, I don't know what the other entities are that would be competing, right? But so what if it was that Verizon then had the contract with BeLive and whatever didn't, and so suddenly, if they chose that this wasn't their preferred association, that maybe they just choose to slow down our connection here, and you and I would be garbled, and the screen would be blurry, and so I think that that's the larger issue. I think it just speaks to the power that we're already giving to monopoly corporations, which is a really, really big problem. And so a lot of people like Ro Khanna, for instance, is often posting on net neutrality on his Facebook page, and the Tompkins County Progressives, I caught, or not Tompkins County, the Tompkins County Democratic Committee posted a photo or a meme today that was showing how the companies will be able to just break it up into tiers, right, and have you basically a la carte the services. And I think that that's one possibility, but it seems like a lot of focus is there, and there may be downsides to it. But I feel like the larger issue is just not having a more neutral protection, right, in what the telecom companies can then do with that supply and information, and so I think it's a really big concern, and it's and that's something that's right FEC dictated, and so
it's a lot of power in one board.
And it speaks to the corruption, right? I mean, Trump, was very intentional about who he put on that board, and it was a prior Verizon, attorney, or who had been an attorney for Verizon in the past, and it just speaks to the amount of in government at the moment, and that's just that. Oh no, I was making I messed something up, and so right, I mean that speaks to so many interwoven issues, and that's one of them. And yeah, I think you've got to protect net neutrality, and it's unfortunate that our current congressman has opted to side with the telecom industries historically.
Yeah, especially since we don't have any telecom industry in our district, do we?
I did speak to.
Oh, we do?
No. Well, I spoke with a couple mornings ago. I spoke with a Rotary over breakfast, and got to chatting with somebody from a telecom and it's a smaller one. They do, I think, cable transmission and broadband, and but they're I don't know what their radius is. It's not huge, but in any case, so bridging from net neutrality to what you said in terms of getting out into your neck of the woods, or the updating the infrastructure also implies also running broadband across the district, and so we were talking a little bit about that. And where the sources of funding are coming from, how the rollout of transmission into more rural areas is coming. He just made the comment that by 2019, that the hope is that 99% of households will at least have access to broadband connections, and that's still the 1%. That's still unfortunate, but it's fortunate that at least that part of the infrastructure is coming along. But what's the infrastructure if it's not protected with net neutrality? So
yeah, and if we have to, what it's going to do is it's really going to limit access to people that cannot afford to get onto the super highway of speed. And it is unfortunate. It really is. And it could be that I will be silenced, and all of the channels and all of the people like me that are trying to make a difference out there with what little we could do.
Mm-hmm.
Done.
Yeah.
And we'll find out soon. We will. And Heidi did have a good one. She talks about net neutrality for us, but what about the whole world? I mean, other countries are already. Portugal's already doing an a la carte kind of system, and I guess the jury's out. And I don't know what Congress has to do with it anyway at this point.
Yeah, I don't know worldwide. I mean, it's even beyond net neutrality. It just speaks to certain industries that have long had regulations on what can be displayed on and access via the internet. So
yeah. Well, this has really been good. We're going on an hour.
Yeah, I'm good. Whatever.
Isn't it amazing? In an hour, it just went flying by. So much good stuff, and everybody's really interactive. I'll give you another comment. We could backtrack a little, because Michael, it says there will be a fracking water recycling plant using chemicals and water many times over, located at the top of watershed area, and creating landfill of poison. So Michael's giving us the dirty lowdown on what will happen.
And is there an area in specifically that you're referencing, Michael? I mean, there's probably any number, but are you thinking of one in particular?
I don't know, Michael. Are you coming up? Well, actually, I don't know.
Yeah, there's, and he may post it here in just a second, but one of the other areas in terms of contamination and pollution, and something that was just this past week was the hearing up in Romulus. So in Ontario County has, I think, two of the largest landfills in the state, and there's just a proposed trash incinerator to be put in Romulus, and it's a pretty. I think it's something that they were, I think, trying to speed through, obviously, but there was a really good turnout from the community to stand up against it a bit. So, it's bridging, just on that content of pollution and being at watersheds, and that's an area that basically sits in the plateau between Cayuga and Seneca Lakes, and running down from there. And that's air and water, so that should be some federal regulation that should be able to step in, but still happens at the municipal and state level. But that's one of those areas that's a hot button topic at the moment in the district. How
does the governor feel about that?
I don't know. I don't think the governor's weighed in. I know that some of the trash that they proposed bringing up would be New York City, I think, area trash, and it'd be coming in via, I think, a lot of rail.
Well, it's our own trash. It's New York. It's not taking in Pennsylvania. And that's one of the things here in Allegheny County is taking in the fracked waste from Pennsylvania, which none of us want here.
Yeah, and so I think maybe it was a week or so ago, I had or maybe it was earlier this week, I don't know, time's a blur, but it was a post on I'm not okay with our district being a dumping ground for other people's fracked waste, waste in general, nuclear waste with the demonstration project.
Absolutely.
So I'm not okay with us being a dumping ground for corporate profit.
Thank you. Yeah. That was definitely. Michael says we have an 80-mile water pipeline from the Ohio River. Well, I don't know if it was exactly what we asked, but you live in Ohio. I live in Ohio. Well, I think Heidi's got it. She said, I can't believe an hour has flown by. And the discussion has been great. It really has. And this is the second one we've had. We covered a lot of ground. And I think the next time it'll be in a couple of more months because the primary's in June, correct? June what?
I think it's like June 20-something. I forget the date, 23rd, maybe, something like that.
So next time you'll come back and you'll have even more in-depth things that you've found out, you've learned, you've done, and it will be great. It'll be great. So I'm going to give you the floor to say what you want to say in closing. Okay, go for it.
I don't necessarily have a closing statement, I think, out here. I'm just really thankful for the opportunity to chat with you again. And those that have tuned in this hour, thank you for being engaged with what Sandy is doing here. And it really does take a community. If you want to check out more about us, our website is goldenforcongress.com. Right now, we're in your neck of the woods, relatively, Sandy. I'm in Jamestown at the moment. We'll be out here for another couple days. We'll be in Olean tomorrow morning. There's a citizens action group that's meeting at 10 that we'll speak with, and you could always send me an email if you want more information there. I was actually, as I was looking up some information before we got on this evening, it reminded me, so we were potentially going to touch on ANWR, and maybe we can talk about that last time. I've had a couple trips up to Alaska and have spent some time up there, and so just being in that that landscape is truly amazing, right? And so that's the thing with hunting and fishing. When you have experiences with the outdoors, it becomes very more personal, right, and visceral, and you're more apt to protect it. So I have, in a very real way, experienced some of that landscape. I'd be more apt to want to protect it, and so what it gave me it reminded me of a film I watched. There's the Banff Mountain Film Festival that comes through Ithaca each year. It'll be in February this year. For all those that are paying attention, if you're within the southern tier here and you can make a trip to see the Banff Mountain Film Festival wherever it's playing, come join us in Ithaca and we'll go.
Cool.
But one of the films last year was it was something, I just lost the name of it. I think it was like The Mighty Salmon. And it was something with tracking. It was basically telling the story of a salmon that had gone up the Susitna River trying to get to the spawning ground. And it was talking about basically power generation and protecting the Susitna River and keeping dams out. And it had a really engaging characters in it. But if you just kind of Google Susitna River, Banff Mountain Film Festival, salmon, dams, or something like that, you'll get to it. And I think it was a really wonderful film. And so for anybody out there, that's, I think, probably anybody tuning into your podcast or whatever right now, it would be somebody who would be into that film. And it was really well done. But it was also taking place in the Alaska landscape. And it was something, just watching it allows you to connect and, again, makes that place more real and worth protecting. So, we could always get into that more next time. But
yeah, it has been really, I did a live stream on it, but it's near and dear to my heart. And we can talk about that more next time, because I'm hoping that the lawsuits will prevent anything from going in there to start. Heidi does have one more question, but Heidi, I do want to tell you, we are about 4 hours from Orange County, and that is, they have events every Saturday in Orange County. They're fighting against the CPV fracked gas plant, this big ugly monstrosity, and that was James Cromwell has been involved in that, and Pramila Malik. It is, they stopped the Millennial Pipeline, I believe it is, from hooking up. So that's a big issue in that part of the state. And we have our CCAC meeting tomorrow morning, which is Concerned Citizens of Allegheny County. And we are the environmental watchdogs for our county. And that's why we are familiar with the fracked waste, because we're looking at it. And Fred Sinclair, who is the head of CCAC, Fred is amazing. He is somebody you should probably talk to more often.
He actually sent me a DVD after I chatted with him briefly in Alfred, and it was, I need to get back to watch it and follow up with him.
Good.
Unfortunately, life is pretty full to be able to sit down and watch a DVD these days, but at some point I'm going to get there, and I'm thankful for Fred and his work and to send it out to me. So.
Oh, yeah. I did a great interview with him. It's on the YouTube and it's on the channel, if you ever get the time, or I could send you the link. Well, I'm going to say thank you. It's an hour, and Henry says thank you. And Henry's in Britain, by the way. He's in the UK. He's so cool. Plays the guitar and he sings to everybody. So thank you, Ian.
Thank you very much, Sandy.
Again, and I'm very proud to have you on. And everybody, thank you so much. And my usual is peace. Peace. Thanks for coming.